to the PHRT Lunch and Learn. I'm going to turn things over to Director Chang, but before I do, I would ask everyone to please mute your computers. Thank you. And Director Chang, the floor is yours.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys so much for attending. This is our third Women's History Month event, and so we are pleased to have Ms. Suzanne Estrella with the Office of Victim Advocate. Before I read her bio, I just wanted to give a reminder to everybody on the call at the front end here that we have our fourth and final Women's History Month event also next week as a virtual event featuring Reverend Carla Christopher. So if you have time in your schedule, please carve that out so that you can attend our final event. As I said, we're really pleased to have Ms. Suzanne V. Estrella. I'm going to read her bio so that everyone is aware of our featured guest. She is the Commonwealth Victim Advocate. She is a victims' rights attorney with over 30 years of legal experience, including 15 years of legal advocacy serving survivors of crime in Pennsylvania. Suzanne was appointed to the Office of Victim Advocate by Governor Wolf and unanimously confirmed by the Pennsylvania Senate in 2021. Suzanne's passion for justice and commitment to centering the marginalized has led the office to expand its victims services as well as its crime prevention and restorative justice efforts. The Office of Victim Advocate employs a full-time social worker offering support groups and creative opportunities to promote hope and resiliency. Suzanne hosts a monthly live Facebook discussion with survivors and continues to work collaboratively with local and state organizations to create safer, caring communities where justice thrives. Suzanne is a graduate of the University of Tulsa College of Law and the Oral Roberts University. She remains a member of the Pennsylvania Bar, Florida Bar, and the Pennsylvania Bar Association. Oh, I'm sorry, I believe it's in there twice. Apologize. She has been highlighted as one of Pennsylvania's 50 over 50, the recipient of the Luminary Award from the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the American Jurisprudence Award. Suzanne is also an experienced trainer providing training to allied professionals on trauma-informed legal services, implicit bias, and victim rights. We are honored and blessed to have you with us. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that warm welcome. I'm happy to be able to be here today and share this space with you and this celebration of Women's History Month. I can say this is the first year that I've had the privilege to be a part of so many women's history celebrations. And there is so much to celebrate and so much to acknowledge, so much greatness. So I'm happy that we are providing space for that and getting to do that together today. So what I'm going to talk about is women's history, a pathway to empowerment. I'm going to say this is my first time doing a training of any type on Teams. So I'm hoping that the technology will work as it should. If it doesn't, please somebody put your hand up and let me know, and hopefully we can work it all out. So when I talk about empowerment, I'm talking about the process of becoming your best self, of taking control and getting to the destiny that you see for yourself. And when I talk about history, I'm talking about the study of past events and how they connect to us in the present day. So when we put those two together, we're thinking about how can we look at those who have come before us and allow that to impact our own process of becoming. Justice. I have always been passionate about justice. The idea that people should be treated fairly just because they're people. I think my role as an advocate today is in large part due to the racial injustice that I experienced as a child and the inability that I found finding my own voice has led me to want to be a voice for others and to help promote justice. So it kind of birthed in me a passion to make a difference. I'm going to pose a question to you as we kind of have this discussion, and I'm going to ask you to think about your vision. Think about what you can see, and how you see and value other people. About, I say maybe 13 years ago or so, I was part of a work training where the presenter asked us to imagine a world without racism. My mind went completely blank. I had no thoughts for that, no frame of reference for that. And in all honesty, I was offended by the suggestion. I was offended by the responses that other coworkers gave. But it did, I think, start me on this kind of process of becoming when I started to take a deep dive and internal look as to why was I so offended by that? And why could I not imagine the possibility of something better? So when we think about that and we think about how different things may kind of set barriers in our lives unintentionally, maybe for our own protection at one point, and then we don't realize how much we're still carrying those things. One example that I could give, and it seems like so silly now, but that it is part of my truth. When I was in middle school, my family moved from Philadelphia to Marlton, New Jersey, and we were confronted with lots of racism. And the kids would like pick on us, tease us. My sister's a year younger than I am, so we were kind of like always together in school. And one of the things that they harped on was that all Black people do is sit around and eat watermelons. And we were like, that doesn't make any sense. But just constantly, and like I said, it seems so silly today, but that was like a constant thing that all Black people do is sit around and eat watermelon. So we kind of had this thing. Well, of course, we liked watermelon, but we never ate watermelon at school. So journey on through life, I'm at work and they're having refreshments with a training. Mind you, I'm 40 years old at this point, and there's watermelon. And I passed by and I said to myself in my head, "Ooh, gee, that watermelon looks good, but I can't eat watermelon in front of white people." And kind of passed by, and then I was like, "Wait a minute, what the heck am I doing? And why am I still thinking about that?" So I went back and I put some watermelon on my plate and I ate it. And I sent my sister a message that said, "Hey, I just ate watermelon at work." And right away, there was no like explanation needed or anything. She said to me, "Way to take back your power." So just, I think sometimes, and it's been a part of my journey, that we don't realize how much things that we were opposed to and didn't like have stuck with us and kind of created unwanted barriers that we then are putting on ourselves. So this process of becoming, when we think about that and what that looks like, when I think about history makers and the history makers that I value, and why do I value them? And I want you to think about the same, like people that you admire in history. What is it about them that you admire, and why do you admire them? For me, it has a lot to do with them being visionaries. Like the fact that they were able to see beyond their present circumstance to something more. And that's what I'm hoping will be your takeaway today, is that we all can have that ability to see beyond our present circumstances and believe for something more. Now, I'm just going to share a few of my favorites. Some of them are historical figures that you will know, and some of them are just kind of like personal history makers in my own life. But Rosa Parks, everybody knows Rosa Parks. And what I admire about her is her advocacy for Black women who are being victimized by sexual assault. And this is something that she was working on long before the bus boycotts. But when I think about how dangerous that must have been, like she went to different areas where women had been raped and assaulted, demanding investigations, demanding change. And for her to have the courage to be able to step out in that day, in that way, for that subject is super empowering for me. I know people probably are most familiar with the Reese Taylor story because that one got so much publicity and later became a book and a movie and things like that. So it's a great way to read more about her work with the civil rights movement. Harriet Tubman, I think she might be one of everyone's favorites. But when I think about the number of times that she made that trip back into slavery, it's mind-blowing for me. When you think about, it's not like she was getting in her car and, oh, I'm going to take a trip to Maryland. She's walking, for one. She's being hunted as she goes. But her reality, even to just do it the one time, we think about the vision that she would have had to see, like she was in slavery, but still beyond all those circumstances, she was able to see a vision of something more, that there was something beyond this. So I hope that you will find that as inspiring and as empowering as I do, because we need that kind of vision where we are in our society today. Constance Baker Motley, she went on to become a judge, but in this photo, she was working as a civil rights attorney. So she entered what was predominantly, clearly a man's world in her time. And she assisted Thurgood Marshall on a lot of the education cases where they were ending that segregation with the schools and different things of that nature. And she's got a really great documentary where she talks about before she passed away, she shared, and she's much, much older than in this photo, but she shared about part of the reason why Thurgood Marshall and the team selected her was because she was a woman. And they felt like these arguments would be kind of received and heard a little bit better from a woman, especially a Black woman, because so many of the men with the power to make the changes in that day had been raised by Black women. So again, just an amazing story about, I think in the documentary, they ask her about going to these different areas for the cases, like if she was afraid, and how she talks about not being afraid, but feeling because it was so important. She realized that what she was doing was so important for the nation that it created this fearlessness in her that enabled her to move forward. And I think that's super powerful. This is my aunt. So when I was very young, she kind of helped me to break down a barrier and see that everything does not have to be about Black and white. She had this particular song that she wanted me to sing for a Christmas pageant. And I said, that song is for white people. She said, songs don't have color. They're just songs. And anybody who wants to sing them can sing them. And for me, that was an amazing and empowering truth that still sits with me today. This is a woman who I knew from church. At the time when I knew her, she was 95 and I was under 10. And she would have a lot of the young girls over to her house. And this was in Philadelphia. Her family was originally from Jacksonville, Florida. Her grandparents were born into slavery. So she would share stories with us about what that was like and the struggles that they lived through. And being able to put like a real person with these historical stories was really impactful for me. And to see all that she had come through in one lifetime was just fascinating. I mean, she would tell us stories about they had one pair of undergarments that they washed out every night because that was the only thing that their family could afford. And to see how far she had come, like I said, when she was having us over, she had a maid, she had a driver, she had a very nice home, and she just instilled in us this idea that we could do anything. And that is super empowering. This is my mother. And I'm sure all of you will agree that moms are history makers. And the neat part about it is that moms are making history every day. The little things that we do day in and day out that you're not really thinking about. Oh, this is important for somebody's history, but they are building history in us all the time. And when I think about moms, it kind of really speaks to the work that we do, how the opportunity that we have on occasions to speak into people's life, to be that one caring adult that every child needs, to be that voice on a person's worst day to say, hey, your life matters. You are important. This should not have happened to you. We want to help you. That's making history. Sometimes kind of like when we look back, we see it from a different perspective. But I imagine that when Harriet Tubman was making those trips, she wasn't thinking, well, hundreds of years from now, people are going to look at me and say, oh, this is great. She did this, she did that. But she's just living out her day to day. So when we live out our day to day, remember, part of the question that I asked you to think about was, how do you value and see other people? When we place the same value on other people that we place on ourselves, that's when we build community. That's when we can develop safer, caring communities where justice thrives, where we take the time to see that this person, no matter what our differences are, they're just as important, just as valuable as I am. That's when we're making history and we're being those difference makers. And this is my family. When I think about my family and I think about the history that I want to create and see in them, I pull from the strength of all of the women that I've mentioned and all of our ancestors to let me know that, hey, that courage is possible, that I can see a brighter future. I remember in 2020 when the Black Lives Matter movement was kind of at its peak, I'd say. And my kids were home from college because of COVID, and somebody had put something on the internet that there was going to be this rally in the Poconos. We were living in the Lehigh Valley at the time, and my kids said, I'm going. And I said, I'm going with you guys. And we went to a Black Lives Matter march. They had made some posters, so we got there, and it was a beautiful thing. There were people from all races, all generations, older people, younger people, all out there with this one goal. And they kind of had split us up into groups, and we were walking through the streets. And the person who was walking with us and like giving the chant, her voice kind of got sore. She got tired of the yelling, and she said, I'm going to need someone to take this over for me. I'm getting choked up. And my son, when and is this one here with all the hair, my youngest, when he bellowed out, no justice, no peace, I was so proud. But at the same time, I was so sad because I thought this should not be their fight. We have been talking about this for far too long. So when I think about history makers and drawing from our past and creating vision for our future, I feel like it's imperative that today we start looking for something else. I do not want my grandchildren to have to be in a Black Lives Matter march. I want us to see a future where that's obvious, where when we say we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that's what we mean. Everybody's equal, that we appreciate and we respect our differences, but we don't allow those differences to separate us or to cause us to belittle or in any way be unjust to one another. And that takes like this deeper dive, like empowerment. It's a journey, it's a process. But when all you know is all you know, and all you do is all you've ever done, change is unlikely. I want us to be history makers who, in the midst of our present circumstances, have a vision for something better. If we don't imagine a new reality, envision a better future, we're limiting ourselves to our present circumstances. We can use the lessons that we learn from history to become stronger, more competent people, to walk in our destiny and create safer, caring communities where justice thrives. Thank you guys for sharing this time and this space with me today. And I think they've asked me to share a little bit of space in case anybody has any questions. So I'm going to open that up if people have questions.
I don't have a question, Ms. Estrella, but I'll just jump in since before anybody does. I just wanted to thank you for making your presentation so candid and personal. I think that that's a nice, different perspective that we don't always get in our Lunch and Learn. So I greatly appreciate you sharing personal experiences to kind of tie back to your passion in your current role.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. And I do want to say thank you guys for all that you do. And like I said, I think it's so important that it is hard to remember on a daily basis because we get so busy in the grind. But the fact that from a daily basis, you could be being that one person that makes that difference, whether it's for a child or an adult. I tell you, this is the last story I'm going to tell. Well, about a month ago, I started trying to jog on Front Street in the mornings before work for exercise. And I'm not a big runner. I don't really like running. I just was kind of getting bored with the gym. So I thought I would try it. And I was out there. You kind of see the same people out there every morning. And one morning I got out there and I was like, this is retarded. I think I'm going home and get back in the bed. And before I could stop, this guy comes running the opposite direction towards me. And I guess the look on my face must have shown, hey, she's had enough. She's about to quit. And the guy says to me, hey, hang in there. Keep going. You got this. Guess what I did? I kept going. I didn't even know this guy. But when he said, keep going, you got this, it empowered me to keep going. Like I felt like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I think that's what we do when we serve the citizens in the Commonwealth. We're that voice to say, hey, don't give up. Change is coming. We can do better. We got this. So I encourage you as you do that for people day in and out, hey, it matters. You are making important contributions to history and your work is appreciated.
So we actually allotted an hour for you. So we are very, very early, and which is certainly fine. But just because we do have the time, I did have a question, and it's a little bit more from a personal perspective than a professional. But you had mentioned about your sons going out to the Black Lives Matter rally, and you being really proud of them and being, next to them. My son is 4, soon to be 5, and I think about when he becomes of age how to approach that, getting involved, because I still have the fear of the mother in me and the fear for his safety. So how do you kind of balance that out or address that where you want to see them as advocates and participating, but also you don't want their safety to be at risk?
Yeah, it is very challenging. And I think the big part of that is I try to make sure that I'm not transferring my fear onto them. Like the habits that I have, like, and things that my parents taught me that I don't really feel are still maybe the necessary when we're thinking about envision for a better future. Like my parents would say to me, just do what you need to do to get along. Um, don't try to upset anybody. You know, when you come home, you can kind of be your whole self, but when you're at school or whatever, just do what you need to do to get along. Well, that kind of was not a truth that my children needed to hear or sit with because times had already changed and grown beyond that. So, and that's kind of been the biggest thing of me not transferring my own fears onto them. Like I used to say, they would go to different things and I would say, how many Black people were there? And they would be like, I don't know, I didn't count. And I would be like, you didn't count, because I never would enter a room and not count how many Black people were there. But that's not really a thing anymore. There's no need for that to be done. So I think just encouraging them that like all cultures have values, and getting to know people and honesty. And I think for all people, I would tell them, and not necessarily, I don't think it has to be a Black or white thing, but like as far as with engagement with law enforcement, my thing is that you approach officers respectfully and answer their questions. And if the officer is doing something wrong, you figure that out later. Let that be addressed later. But in the moment, you do what you need to do for your safety, which may be just complying. So, but your son is so much younger. I think I would just approach it from the standpoint of people are different, but we love everybody, and we get to learn about different cultures and experience different cultures, and things of that nature.
Thank you. And just so I don't miss anyone, Christopher Young had commented in the chat, no question, just a comment. Thanks so much for sharing from the heart. And Amanda Rothman, or Director Rothman, said, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. Can't tell if is that someone with a question or just someone that inadvertently unmuted.
I think it's just somebody who's unmuted.
Okay.
I think I missed somebody.
Anything else? Any other questions? Anything more, Ms. Estrella? As I said, we certainly have time. If there's anything else, if not, we can have everybody adjourn.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I'm an elected official, and what I'm seeing more and more these days, much like the tension, not only tension between Black and white, but the gender injustice from many different individuals. I used to be the state president of now, so I do speak up and speak out. My question is, what can people in public do when they see bullying happening or microaggressions occurring? And most people, when I see it, just kind of sit back and cringe and don't do anything. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, my recommendation would be to speak up, say something. Because when you don't, it makes the other person feel, the person who's being harmed feels like that you're complicit with what's being said or done. I mean, this was a couple years ago, but when my daughter turned 16, I took her to the ballet. So we were in New York City Ballet, and there was a couple there who appeared to be maybe from some part of India or something of that nature, from the accents and things like that. And I don't know if you've been to the ballet, but you're supposed to be really quiet. So the guy was attempting to talk to his wife in what clearly he thought was a whisper, but it was kind of on the loud side. Well, this lady started going off on him. She had already been through all that, and then she got ugly. And it was several people, myself and other people in the audience. She said something to the effect of, "That's why Americans don't like you people." And there was about 3 or 4 of us that said, "Whoa, wait a minute! You don't speak for everybody here, and that's rude. You shouldn't have done that." So if we had have all just sat there and not said anything, then they may have thought, "Oh, this is true. This is what Americans think." So I think when we have the opportunities to call people out, and it doesn't have to be ugly, you can say, "Hey, that seems kind of offensive. Did you mean to hurt their feelings, or where's that coming from?" I think that that's important, and that helps to bring about change.
Very had said, "I love that you mentioned considering how we can be history makers and difference makers in the midst of our current reality. This is a great reflection and question for all of us." Any other questions, comments for Ms. Estrella? Again, we certainly have time. Okay. Well, I just wanted to tell you, Ms. Estrella, Executive Director Lester is generally always on these events. Unfortunately, he got pulled for another engagement, but he does send his regards and personal thank you to your agreement and participating in our Women's History Month celebration. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of his acknowledgement for your participation. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody, for your time today and for carving out some of your lunch time to participate here and listen to Mrs. Today's presentation. Again, Mrs. Today, thank you so much for your candor. As I said, the trainings are always beneficial regardless of the approach brought to us, but certainly hearing from a personal perspective, I think kind of resonates just a little bit deeper sometimes than that educational standpoint. So I appreciate that. And so I think we're gonna go ahead and let everyone go. If there's nothing else, we can be reached via email. You have mine and Director Rothman's contact should you need anything else. And I'm sure ED Lasker will reach out as he's able to.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Director Rothman, can you hang tight for a minute?
Of course.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, we can probably turn the recording off.